One night, Shadow Garden held an important meeting to report on the situation from various places. Since the God of War festival ended, there has been no movement from the Diabolos cult in the Midgar Kingdom. The groups formed by Diabolos also did not have any movement. Even Fenrir's group, the 5th seat member of the Diabolos cult, is trying to rebuild the group order in the Diabolos cult. The Diabolos cult is in confusion because Shadow Garden always manages to thwart their plans. Shadow Garden's mission is now to focus on the Oriana Kingdom. But unfortunately, there is growing financial activity heading to the Lawless City. The Lawless City is an area that does not belong to any kingdom. Lots of crime, pleasure of lust, and freedom in a very dirty environment. Of course, these financial activities are very strange in such a lawless city. Then suddenly, Shadow said something that surprised the Shadow Garden members.
赤いあれではまるで伝説の
匂うな
The red moon is a phenomenon and tragedy that occurred 1,000 years ago. If this happens again, the entire city will be destroyed. But Alpha said that if this red moon was a sign of such a tragedy, Shadow Garden would make a move before it happened. Then Shadow says that he will conduct an investigation directly into the Lawless City. Of course, Beta and the others didn't want Shadow to go there alone. But Shadow tells them not to worry about it. Then, the members of Shadow Garden understood Shadow's intentions, because any phenomenon or tragedy would not be able to resist Shadow's power.
赤い月も美しいと思わないか
伝説の赤き月もあなたの前では型なしね
所詮月が赤いだけの話そうだろ
As we know from the first season, Shadow created the Shadow Garden organization just for fun. He creates his own delusions, scenarios, and storylines. He didn't understand anything that was going on. Even he didn't know that Shadow Garden had developed rapidly and had a large headquarters. Most importantly, he shows his cool figure as Shadow at certain moments, eradicate the evil in the shadows, and wants to be an extra or supporting character. Of course, Shadow didn't understand what was going on at the moment. The moon turning red has been going on for some time. It indicates that the resurrection of the Blood Queen will soon come, as in the legend. On the other hand, Goldo, Kinmeki, and Quinton are hunting the Blood Queen, who will soon rise. They had arrived at the Lawless City and immediately went to the Crimson Tower. When they wanted to enter the tower, they were blocked by someone nicknamed the White Demon. The White Demon said that only slaves, guests, or people who had power could pass through the gates of this tower. Then Goldo and Quinton said they had no business with the White Demon. They want to kill the Blood Queen now. But the White Demon prevented them because whoever opposed the Blood Queen, they would be made into guard dogs, or tortured to the condition that the White Demon is experiencing now. The White Demon only had one arm because he used to oppose the Blood Queen. The White Demon will not allow strangers to enter the Crimson Tower, so he would have fun fighting them now. The next day, Sid and Claire went to the Lawless City to head to the Spell Sword Knight Association. They were there to participate in a strategy meeting to attack the vampires in the Crimson Tower. Back during the God of War festival, Claire wins the festival as the grand champion. Because of this, Sid invited Claire to eat at an expensive restaurant with a VIP room. Of course, all these luxuries Sid gets for free. This restaurant belongs to the Mitsugoshi Company, which Gamma and other Shadow Garden members manage. Claire was amazed that Sid could book a place like this for her. Well, even though Sid's real reason was just to keep Claire from bothering him during the holidays. But it turned out that Claire invited Sid to go to the Lawless City. Back to the present, Claire brings Sid to the Lawless City for the future of her beloved brother. So far, Sid has never wanted to tell Claire about his future. Not long after, there was a slave trader who offered Claire the price of cheap but quality slaves. When the slave trader shows his slaves, it turns out they are Goldo and Quinton, who are unconscious. Then Claire refused the slave trader's offer because she already had a pet. What Claire means is probably Sid. After they found a place to stay, Claire went to the Magic Sword Knight Association as soon as possible. Of course, Sid deliberately walks around in the Lawless City and gets lost there. Many people wanted to steal money from Sid, but instead, Sid took his money back as well as the thief's money. This was easy for Sid. In fact, he could become rich if he continued to stay in this Lawless City, which was like heaven in his eyes. After Sid steals a lot of money from thieves, he sees some people beating up the ghoul. Sid just watched because this incident was normal in this Lawless City. Whoever is strong or has power, they will rule in this city. Ghouls are usually used as punching bags for residents who like violence. When it was night, the red moon suddenly grew bigger and radiated strong magic.
魔力の波。どうしよう。いつも通りモブっぽく逃げるか。
Residents who are bitten by the ghoul will turn into ghouls. This is the magic effect of the red moon. Sid, who saw this, laughed and wanted to create a cool storyline again as usual. He thought about what action would make him cool when eradicating these ghouls. Not long after, a red-haired girl saw Sid dealing with the ghouls. Of course, she immediately rescues Sid, who she thinks is just an ordinary citizen. Sid asks the girl, "Who are you?" Then, the girl introduced herself. She is Mary, the oldest vampire hunter. Mary said super cool words in front of Sid. "Run if you don't want to die. The rampage will begin soon. The moon is turning red, there's no time left." After saying these words, Mary left there to hunt other ghouls. Of course, Sid got goosebumps after hearing Mary's cool words. From here, Sid will have fun in the lawless city.
これが時間がない。
On the other hand, Jaga and Hiro are in a lawless city. They deliberately visit places of prostitution to satisfy their lust. There were many beautiful and sexy women there, which made their swords very tense. But unfortunately, this place has been attacked by ghouls. Of course, Jaga and Hiro immediately ran away as quickly as possible. In one house, a young girl had just finished having sex with an old uncle. Her name is Marie, and she always receives rude behavior when serving her customers. When she wanted to rest, the old uncle came back as a ghoul. Of course, Marie was scared to see him and just saw the situation outside, filled with ghouls. When the uncle ghoul wanted to attack Marie, Shadow comes to save her. Then Shadow repeated the same words as Mary before. Marie didn't understand what Shadow meant. After Shadow left, one of her friends approached Marie. Then Marie's friend was surprised because the ghoul had died there. Marie says that it was Shadow who saved her. Of course, Marie's friends are shocked because Shadow is a bad guy who has caused a lot of chaos. According to her, tonight's chaos was also part of Shadow's plan. Then Marie was determined to get out of this crazy city. She didn't want to continue living there. In Marie's mind, she was grateful to Shadow and was sure that Shadow was not evil. On the other hand, Goldo and Quentin finally woke up from their stupor. They immediately fled from the city, which was filled with ghouls. On the other hand, Claire has returned to the inn to take Sid away. Then she was very annoyed and worried about Sid because Sid was not in his guest room. There was also a commotion from the uncle making love with a ghoul girl. After Claire helped the uncle, she looked for Sid in the city by telling the knights about Sid's physical characteristics. When she goes around town, she finds her beloved brother dead. Claire cries and hugs the corpse because she regrets bringing Sid to the lawless city. Not long after, Mary came to Claire because she met two men with black hair and eyes. Mary explains that the corpse Claire holds does not have a black eye.
え？誰よあんた？
Mary said the first man she saw was laughing out loud at the ghoul. Then, the second man was afraid when he saw the ghouls. Claire said that the second man was her younger brother. According to Claire, Sid couldn't possibly laugh when he was scared. Mary said that the Blood Queen's subordinates had taken the second man to the Crimson Tower. The vampires are trying to bring offerings for the resurrection of the Blood Queen in the Crimson Tower. Blood Queen Elizabeth will rise from her sleep once every 1,000 years. She desperately needed the blood of a living young man. Mary knew this because there was already a sign from the vampires who had brought a man as an offering. Then Claire said she would head to the Crimson Tower immediately. Mary will also head there to kill Elizabeth. Because of this, they team up to achieve their respective interests.
へえ、待ってなさいシド。地上からの侵入は難しいが方法はある。ついてきて。私はクレア。
On the other hand, the Spell Sword Knight Association could no longer fight against the ghouls. But there is one girl who still tries to survive. When the ghouls were about to attack the girl, Shadow came to save her. Again, Shadow uses the words spoken by Mary before, even though Shadow didn't understand those words and didn't know what would happen next. He just thought like this: oh, those are cool words. I'll use them for my shadow appearance while hunting ghouls and money. On the other hand, Yukime, the master of the White Tower, receives a report that the lawless city is almost filled with ghouls. Then Yukime says that if anyone is still alive, they won't be able to get out of this terrible city. Meanwhile, Juggernaut, the master of the Black Tower, also received the same report as Yukime's subordinates. Yukime and Juggernaut immediately eradicate the ghouls to get to the Crimson Tower as quickly as possible. But they also compete because they hate each other. In the Crimson Tower, Crimson's subordinates have finished preparing the ritual for the offering to Blood Queen Elizabeth. He also reports to Crimson that there is resistance from Yukime and Juggernaut. What's more, there is Shadow, who helps eradicate ghouls in the city. Of course, Crimson was shocked after hearing that.
主を
あいえですがもう一人何
我が名はシャドウ。影に潜み影を狩る者。
Yukime and Juggernaut knew Shadow's name from their subordinates' reports since many incidents in the Midgar Kingdom. They even knew Shadow's group had killed the Archbishop in the Lindberm city. Then, Juggernaut destroys the Crimson Tower gate to prey on the vampires inside. Shadow also repeated the same words as Mary before. Of course, Juggernaut didn't care about these words and legends. The most important thing is that Juggernaut can have fun now. Yukime said that Shadow had saved many people in prostitution areas, so she wanted to establish a good relationship with Shadow now. On the other hand, White Demon was surprised because Yukime and Juggernaut joined in the party killing ghouls tonight. They could even enter the Crimson Tower so easily without caring about the existence of the White Demon. The Crimson Tower gate was made of artifacts, and there was no way anyone could destroy it. The White Demon was very upset because he couldn't match the strength of Yukime and Juggernaut. But when the White Demon saw Shadow, the White Demon did not feel any magic flow from him. Because of that, the White Demon laughed and attacked Shadow. White Demon thinks that Shadow is a weak person.
月が赤い。
On the other hand, Beta and the Shadow Garden members are in the Crimson Tower Library. They are investigating the relationship between vampires and demons. Not long after, Claire and Mary fell from a small hallway near the library. They wanted to avoid entering through the main door to save fighting stamina. Then Beta said she should eliminate all witnesses who saw Shadow Garden's activities. But Beta won't do that to them. Claire, the winner of the God of War festival, and Mary, the oldest vampire hunter. Claire was surprised that Beta recognized her. Initially, Claire wanted to take out her sword, but Mary held back Claire's intentions because the number of Beta members was large. By the way, Rose, who just joined Shadow Garden in the first season, is now on her first mission supervised by Beta. Rose is called as 666. Then Claire asks, "Who are you guys? And what is your purpose in coming to the Crimson Tower?" Beta explains that she and the people she brought are now members of Shadow Garden. Shadow Garden is researching how to cure humans possessed by demons using the blood of the oldest vampire. Vampires and demons have something in common. When they were involved with blood, their strength would definitely rise drastically. Because of this, Beta wanted to investigate Elizabeth's blood sample. Shadow Garden will not interfere with Claire and Mary's purpose in coming to Crimson Tower, and vice versa. Then Mary was slightly offended because Shadow Garden equated vampires with demons. Claire also found out about Shadow Garden when there was a fire at the Midgar school. Then Claire asked for an explanation of other ways to cure the phenomenon of demonic possession. After hearing that, Beta was silent for a moment and smiled. Then she said that Claire didn't need to worry about being possessed by the demon. Of course, Claire was confused by Beta's answer, but Claire decided to leave there because they didn't have much time. They must save Sid quickly because he is being Elizabeth's sacrificial ritual. After hearing this, Rose immediately approached Claire, but Beta restrained her and told her to continue the investigation. Then, Beta said something to Mary, and Mary was very offended by Beta's words.
安息の地を目指す気はないのですかメアリー
After Claire and Mary leave, Beta warns Rose not to act carelessly. Every member of Shadow Garden must hide their identity. Shadow Garden's task was limited to finding information about Elizabeth and taking her blood sample. Meanwhile, Shadow will take care of everything from the beginning to the end of the mission in this city. Several minutes passed. Claire and Mary managed to kill many vampires there. But unfortunately, Mary continued to remain silent even though Claire asked her to talk. Then Claire asked Mary about the resting place. Claire asked that because Mary seemed to be hiding something from Claire. However, Mary did not answer Claire's question, and Mary asked her a question back. Why do you ask how to cure people who are possessed by demons? Anyone who has been possessed cannot possibly return to being human again. Everyone has something to hide, including Claire and Mary. Then, they suddenly heard a tremendous explosion sound. It turns out it came from Juggernaut, who was fighting against the vampires. Mary and Claire peek at the fight. Mary explains who Juggernaut is to Claire. Then, Mary advises not to fight Juggernaut because he is a difficult opponent to beat. When they want to leave there,
気づかれないうちに
Juggernaut suddenly attacks them. Then Claire stood up and immediately approached Mary. who was seriously injured. Of course, Claire immediately uses her magic to try to heal Mary. But Mary resists Claire's magic and does something Claire didn't expect. Mary deliberately kissed Claire to drink the blood in Claire's mouth. This made Claire blush because Mary suddenly did this. Not long after, Mary's body returned to normal and immediately fought Juggernaut. But unfortunately, Mary hasn't used this power for a long time and can't use it to its full potential. Then, Juggernaut will attack Claire once again. Claire had no hope of dodging that deadly attack. Because of this, Claire apologized to Sid in her heart for not being able to save Sid in time. But suddenly something happened. Juggernaut is kicked by Shadow out of Crimson Tower. Then Shadow said the same thing as Mary in front of them. When Shadow had left there, Mary remembered that Shadow was a person who was hostile to the Lindbergh Church. Then Mary immediately apologized to Claire for drinking her blood like that. Claire didn't mind that, but Claire took issue with how Mary drank the blood. But Claire won't discuss that because she just found out that Mary is a vampire. Then they told each other what they were hiding. Mary said that 1,000 years ago, there was a massive blood party for vampires. That was the heyday for vampires who always hunted and enjoyed human blood. But one day, humans discovered the weakness of the vampires. Because of this, humans fought back against the vampires by exposing them to sunlight. However, not all vampire areas experienced this incident. Elizabeth's territory is a territory that has the principle of coexistence with humans. Then Mary was one of Elizabeth's servants for many years. All vampires in Elizabeth's territory shun and throw away anything related to blood. Because of this, the vampires there can survive in the sun. Their lust for consuming blood has been banished. However, only Elizabeth couldn't get rid of her lust as a vampire. Elizabeth has very powerful vampire powers. Then, Elizabeth wanted to make the resting place with Mary and the others even better. That place is Elizabeth's territory, where humans or vampires can live happily. But unfortunately, the red moon phenomenon came and gave enormous power to the vampires. Crimson deliberately put human blood drops in Elizabeth's drink. Of course, this made Elizabeth's lust even crazier, and her power increased drastically. With just that drop of blood, Elizabeth immediately went on a rampage and killed all the residents for 3 days. 3 countries were destroyed, and Mary drank blood from human corpses that night. She still wanted to follow and accompany Elizabeth. One night, Elizabeth committed suicide in front of Mary because she did not want to repeat her mistake. A dead vampire definitely turns to ashes, but Elizabeth couldn't be reduced to ashes that easily because of her tremendous strength. So, Mary will continue to accompany and protect her. However, Crimson managed to defeat Mary, who was still weak, and Elizabeth was taken by him. Since then, Mary has the ambition to prevent Crimson from destroying humans or other species. Because of this, Mary became the oldest vampire hunter, thousands of years old, and targeted Blood Queen Elizabeth. Then Claire also said she had been possessed by a demon since childhood. Claire could turn into a monster someday. So, she prepared many things for Sid, her beloved younger brother. Then Claire decides that she will try to defeat Crimson after saving Sid. Claire also wants Mary to save Elizabeth. For Claire, the hope of creating a better resting place still exists. On the other hand, Shadow finally finds where the vampire's treasure is. Of course, Shadow immediately took a lot of coins there. Epsilon uses her slime for her breasts. Meanwhile, Shadow uses slime to hold the money he stole. Shadow wanted to live for 300 years, so this much money still wasn't enough for him. Shadow also feels that he saved Claire in this Crimson Tower, but Shadow doesn't care because whatever happens next is at Claire's risk alone. After stealing all the money belonging to the vampires, Shadow thinks of the next cool storyline. Lately, he always appears like a hero who is too late to face the final boss. For some people, this might be epic, but Shadow wants something that the main characters can't imagine. Before the main characters arrived, he thought about going straight to the final boss. This is an epic moment that is sure to surprise everyone after seeing how cool Shadow is. Because of that, he immediately went to the top of the Crimson Tower, and Crimson was implanting a heart in a man. After Shadow released his power, He didn't see any powerful bosses waiting in this area. Then Shadow thinks that the chaos that is happening in this city doesn't have a strong final boss. Because of that, Shadow will recheck the bottom of the tower. If he still didn't find the final boss, Shadow would take all the remaining gold in the tower and go home. But when Shadow left there, it turned out that Elizabeth's heart reacted, and Elizabeth would wake up soon. Several minutes passed. Mary and Claire arrived at the top of the tower and were surprised to see the situation there. Claire immediately looks for Sid, and Mary calls Elizabeth. But suddenly Mary was shocked because something terrible was going to happen and told Claire to get out of there as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Claire was attacked by Elizabeth first. Elizabeth had risen, and she immediately drank Claire's blood. Beta, Rose, 665, and 664 immediately rescue and try to heal Claire. Claire couldn't possibly survive if she only used healing magic like this. Then, Beta will try to force herself to fight Elizabeth. Beta asks 664 to continue providing first aid to Claire. Meanwhile, 665 and Rose have to help Beta fight Elizabeth. It turns out that Beta, 665, and Rose's attacks couldn't beat Elizabeth. The magic energy released by Elizabeth was too great. Yukime has also arrived at the top of the tower and is careful of Elizabeth's attacks. Not long after, Juggernaut arrived at the top of the tower and immediately attacked Elizabeth. But Juggernaut's strength could not defeat Elizabeth, and in the end, Juggernaut was seriously injured. Then Elizabeth immediately attacked them again with her extraordinary strength. Fortunately, Beta managed to slightly protect Rose, 665, 664, Mary, and Claire there. Then Beta saw the condition of the others who were quite badly injured. Elizabeth increasingly has very strong magical energy. Because of this, Beta told Rose to take Claire away from there as soon as possible. Initially, Rose still wanted to help Beta fight Elizabeth, but Beta wants to prioritize Rose and Claire's safety first. Moreover, Beta understands that Rose still has a grudge against Doem and must resolve the problems in Rose's kingdom, the Oriana Kingdom. Rose understood Beta's intentions, and when Beta wanted to attack Elizabeth again. Suddenly, Claire was in a school medical room and met Aurora there. Of course, Claire was confused by the situation, and she didn't know Aurora. She was previously in a fighting situation with Elizabeth, but she suddenly woke up to a situation like this. Aurora didn't explain anything about the situation Claire was experiencing now. Actually, it was Claire's subconscious. Aurora explains that Claire doesn't need to be confused by this situation. Since childhood, Claire has been possessed by a demon or demon possession, but this has been cured by the power of someone very close to Claire. Aurora won't explain who the person is because Claire should already know. He knows everything about Claire because he has always protected Claire, and will continue to protect Claire forever. Claire has also gained enormous strength from that person since childhood. But unfortunately, Claire couldn't adapt to the immense power she got from that person. Claire's body will rot any minute now. Hearing this, Claire was shocked and kept asking various things that she didn't understand now, including the person who cured her demon possession. But Aurora didn't answer Claire's question. Currently, Claire's demon-possessed blood, which has long been cured, is mixed with Elizabeth's vampire blood magic. These two bloods, with extraordinary magic, tried to adapt to Claire's body. However, there is a limit in Claire's body that cannot accept these two great powers. Claire can actually control all these powers because she has his powers. But unfortunately, Claire doesn't know the technique to control all of that. Because of this, Claire's body and blood went berserk. When Aurora was about to continue her explanation in more detail, it turned out that she didn't have much time left to discuss this. Then suddenly, a magic pattern was printed on Claire's left hand like chemistry. Then, she introduced herself to Claire. Aurora says that the magic pattern will help Claire control her powers. Aurora was willing to help Claire for Shadow's sake, because Shadow and Claire were.
シャドウ。シャドウ。あなたを助けたのは、あなたが彼の。
Well, Aurora couldn't explain in more detail, and Claire's subconscious broke suddenly because something happened inside Claire's body.
クレアなのか。そんな、なぜ。ちょっときついわね。よし。彼やあなたたちと同じよ。自分の背丈の方が動きやすいから。
Aurora borrows Claire's body to fight Elizabeth temporarily. Aurora has a blood type of magic, and she really understands how to fight Elizabeth. Because of this, Aurora challenges Elizabeth to a fight now. They started fighting with their respective blood magic techniques. Even Aurora will show Elizabeth the greatest magical power in the world.
はあ、あなたまさか。
おいおい、なんでもありか。
It was Shadow's magic power. Of course, Beta was surprised because Aurora couldn't possibly imitate the magic of that magnitude. But Aurora continued with the magic, and then Claire's hand broke and started bleeding everywhere. Aurora stopped Shadow's magic because Claire's body is not strong enough to cast this magic. Then, she will return to reside in Claire's subconscious. Aurora told Beta and the others to use greater healing magic on Claire after this battle. Aurora's task of hindering Elizabeth is complete because Shadow has arrived at the top of the Crimson Tower again. Shadow finally arrives with a lot of money in his slime cloak. Elizabeth continued brutally attacking Shadow, and everyone there saw a very intense fight. But Beta is confused. Why does Shadow use long-range combat like this? Shadow should be able to immediately use close combat and defeat Elizabeth easily. However, Beta finally understood Shadow's intention of using long-range combat. According to Beta, Shadow did that because he wanted to protect everyone behind him. Moreover, Shadow said he didn't want to lose everything. Beta is increasingly convinced that Shadow is protecting them from Elizabeth's attacks. She was moved because Shadow was a noble, elegant, and cool figure. However, in Shadow's perspective, Shadow's true meaning was that he didn't want to lose all the money he had stolen previously. This money is very valuable for his future. I felt sorry for Beta because she was too confident in Shadow's actions. Anyway, Shadow is a little upset because the money he stole is almost gone. Because of this, he immediately fought Elizabeth at close range.
Recovery Atomic.
お名前をお聞かせ願えるかしら、紳士様。
What extraordinary magic! Even Shadow can get rid of the red moon phenomenon easily. Several minutes passed, Beta managed to heal Claire with her powers, and Shadow would take Claire to the city inn. Then Beta, Rose, 665, and 664 will return to headquarters to discuss other missions. Meanwhile, Mary will take care of Elizabeth again like before. Juggernaut and Yukime were amazed to see Shadow's strength. Because of that, Juggernaut was interested in fighting against Shadow and Shadow Garden next time. The next day, Claire and Mary said goodbye because Claire and Sid were returning to Midgar Kingdom. After that, Claire and Sid will go home by train again. In Sid's mind, ghouls, vampires, and those possessed by demons just have different nicknames. If one couldn't control this power, one wouldn't be able to survive, or the magic energy would possibly go out of control. For Sid, all these phenomena are easy to cure or control with his power. However, there is one disease that Sid cannot possibly cure. The disease is related to a person's behavior. A simple example is Claire's last night in her room. Claire hid the magic pattern on her left hand with a bandage. Then she said to herself, "Oh, my left hand is throbbing. Seems like this is a sign that I have special powers. What fate awaits me in the future?" Sid saw and heard all of Claire's words. Of course, Sid thinks that Claire is still growing because she is experiencing Chunibyo syndrome, where Chunibyo syndrome is imagining as if someone has hidden powers. People may even say fictional or poetic things about their delusions of power. Claire also tells Sid that she has special powers in her left hand. Claire wants to find out the mystery of what will happen in the future. She also wanted to find out what special power was in her left hand. Then Sid says that Claire will definitely be fine. Sid always supports Claire in whatever future path she takes. Claire blushed and thanked Sid. Then Claire took Sid's hand and leaned on his shoulder. Claire asks Sid, "Do you know about Shadow?" Then Sid simply replies, "That was the guy who burned down the school, wasn't he? What's wrong with Shadow?" Claire didn't answer anything, and she fell asleep on Sid's shoulder. In Sid's mind, Claire will likely face various difficulties in the future, including doubt and suffering. Even so, Sid was very satisfied with yesterday's Lawless City incident. Well, although Sid could only bring a little money because the rest had been destroyed by Elizabeth. Sid couldn't immediately beat Elizabeth yesterday because he had too much money in his slime. After all, the Lawless City had returned to its original state, and there were still 2 towers. Sid can visit there to steal money again next time. When they arrived in Midgar Kingdom, Shadow received a report that someone wanted to meet him. Then Shadow met the person directly at night.
さて要件を聞こうか。
Yukime is grateful that Shadow has protected everyone in the White Tower area, especially Yukime's prostitution area. Yukime explained that the trade competition between the major corporate alliance and the Mitsugoshi company had been heating up since several months ago. Mitsugoshi's trade increased too rapidly and made MCA anxious. MCA was even willing to do bad things to Mitsugoshi so that Mitsugoshi's trade would immediately be destroyed. At the same time, Mitsugoshi's freight train was intercepted by a group of hitmen from MCA. The members of Shadow Garden were shocked that they had been surrounded suddenly like this. They asked the hitmen, "Who told you to do this?" Then, the hitmen answered that it was Mr. Garter who arranged for them to carry out this ambush. Mr. Garter is furious that Mitsugoshi has made a fortune and controls the market in Midgar City. He is a good leader at MCA, but he also has his hidden side. Then, the hitmen will immediately attack the Shadow Garden members and kill them. However, the members of Shadow Garden blew their cover. Shadow Garden was very grateful to the hitmen for providing important information about the MCA. Of course, the hitmen were extremely frightened because they were facing Shadow Garden. Then Shadow Garden immediately killed the hitmen in an instant. Alpha, Nu, Kai, Omega, and the others have worked well. Finally, they discovered the mastermind behind all the strange events regarding Midgar City's financial flows and other things. Shadow Garden also suspects that the MCA may ally with the Diabolos cult. It had been a long time since the Diabolos cult had attacked so brutally. Most likely, they are doing something behind the scenes secretly. Let's go back to Shadow and Yukime's conversation. According to Yukime, this competition will create good business opportunities for her company. The Snow Fox Corporate will reap huge profits by planning to seize Mitsugoshi and MCAS market. Therefore, the Snow Fox Corporate needed Shadow to achieve this goal. Then Shadow thought for a moment. He just realized that Shadow Garden's Mitsugoshi was experiencing big problems. Even so, Shadow intends to participate in the Yukime's plans. According to Shadow, this will be a very interesting and cool storyline. After Shadow agrees to Yukime's invitation, Shadow wants to change his identity and asks for clothes from the Snow Fox Corporate. Then Yukime immediately prepared clothes according to Shadow's wishes.
今宵世界は我が名を知る。
Shadow's name is now disguised as John Smith, the super elite agent. John will also gain a big advantage if he enters between the Mitsugoshi and MCA trade wars. Yukime said that the 2 trade factions were trying to destroy each other, but John had to be careful with someone behind MCA other than Garter. The man's name is Getan, and he is usually called the Sword Demon, a swordsman who became the master of the MCA above Garter. Getan is a dangerous man who will do anything to achieve his goals. Yukime knew Getan's nature for a long time, and she wanted revenge this time.
奴のことはワッチが必ず。
Mitsugoshi Company is a company that has very rapid innovation when compared to MCA. All products released by Mitsugoshi are truly acceptable to the public, starting from ordinary people to nobles. A simple example is the luxury clothing products sold by Mitsugoshi. Suits and office clothing styles are a trend among the nobility. Even so, these clothes come from Sid's knowledge of his world. Sid has told Seven Shadow various things, including finances and how to manage them to get huge profits. But without Sid realizing it, it turns out that the Midgar City market is already transacting with paper money. This surprised Sid because Shadow Garden had been operating a bank for a long time. The circulation of these banknotes has occurred since the development of the Mitsugoshi Company. Mitsugoshi Bank's banknotes can be used for commercial transactions because it is a form of trust between the customer and the bank. Mitsugoshi Bank will hold all the gold belonging to residents. Then, in exchange for this trust, Mitsugoshi Bank gave banknotes worth the gold the residents kept in the Mitsugoshi Bank safe. These banknotes can be exchanged for gold someday if the residents want it. The idea of banknotes in this world is very good because people no longer need to carry such heavy gold coins everywhere. Initially, the banknotes could only be used if people wanted to shop at the Mitsugoshi Mall. But now, Mitsugoshi banknotes can be used in all markets of the Midgar City. On the other hand, the idea of the banknotes was copied by MCA, and MCA made banknotes with their original designs. Currently, there are 2 banknotes that citizens use for transactions with the same principle. Then, Sid had a very good idea after seeing the difference between the 2 banknotes. Mitsugoshi Bank's banknotes are very neatly printed, full of color, and have a special stamp on certain sides. Meanwhile, MCA's banknotes are printed randomly with a haphazard design. Then Sid went back to Yukime to tell her about the idea he was planning now. He wants Yukime to make counterfeit money. Basically, people can only trust banks through the banknotes circulated by the bank. Banknotes that seem worth gold coins can be manipulated at any time. For example, if someone entrusts 10,000 gold coins to the bank, he will receive banknotes worth 10,000 as well. But one day, that person would pay his debt to someone else, and he didn't have enough money. Because of this, he borrowed money from the bank, and the bank gave him the money according to his wishes. But he has to pay the bank a little more as payment for the bank's services. Then, banks circulated more banknotes to meet people's debt needs. John called this incident a credit interest, and Yukime just learned about this term in the Mitsugoshi Bank Profit System or MCA. Indirectly, banks are a profitable business because they manipulate gold coins into banknotes, generating a sense of trust in the public, even though it is just paper, which is not actually worth the same as gold coins. Currently, more banknotes are circulating than the number of gold coins that residents deposit in banks. Because of this, counterfeit money became a good method to destroy both trading factions at once in a short time. That way, Yukime and John didn't have to wait long for the 2 factions to destroy each other. Of course, the target of the counterfeit money that John wanted was money belonging to MCA Bank. The banknotes that MCA Bank has are very easy to imitate and counterfeit. Suppose counterfeit money belonging to the Yukime Company can enter the market. In that case, citizens will increasingly wonder, do banks have enough gold coins to pay for the money we have? When these suspicions arise, residents will tell each other and doubt the value of the banknotes. Because of this, residents definitely go to Mitsugoshi Bank and MCA to ask for their gold coins back, according to the banknotes that residents have. Of course, the bank will not be able to return gold coins in the same amount as the banknotes that the bank has circulated. If this moment is achieved perfectly, Mitsugoshi Bank and MCA will go bankrupt and be destroyed simultaneously. Actually, Sid did all this just to save Mitsugoshi. It was as if Sid had betrayed the organization he had created himself. But he will rebuild the trading company with a new name after Mitsugoshi and MCA are destroyed. Sid can make Alpha and the others as senior officials in the new trading company. If Sid's plan succeeds, he will make huge profits and become rich. Sid will carry out his plan secretly and will not tell this to anyone, including the members of Shadow Garden. Sid will also change his fighting style later. He believes his disguise as Super Elite Agent John Smith is very cool, carrying out a corporate rescue mission alone with a very complex plan. The principle of the role of Super Elite Agent John Smith now is I will destroy everything and build it again.
子供の頃に夢見たことがあるんだ。スーパーエリートエージェンツ、夢は。
When Sid was having dinner at a Stan Street Food, he met Delta in a super sexy outfit. After they finished dinner, Delta smelled a fox scent on Sid's body, but Sid lies to Delta that Sid hunted foxes before. After hearing that, Delta wants Sid to join the hunt because Alpha is telling Delta to target the bandits. Then they hunted for bandits in the underground city of Midgar, and it turned out that the bandits that Alpha was referring to were MCAS subordinates. After Delta killed several bandits, there was a bandit named Zabra who recognized Delta. Zabra calls Delta Sarah, and Sarah is Zabra's younger sister. Zabra didn't think that Sarah could recover from demon possession. Sarah's father used to deliberately hunt down Sarah because she was affected by this phenomenon. However, Sarah doesn't remember Zabra's figure even though Zabra smells the same as Sarah's father. Even so, Zabra said that he was working under Getan's authority, and Zabra invited Sarah to join. But Sarah didn't care about Zabra's words and invitations, then Sarah immediately killed him. Shadow asks Delta, "Are you sure to do that?" Delta replies that he is a weakling, and a weakling would bring shame to the family. Delta's father was a tribal chief and had many concubines who gave birth to more than 1,000 children. If the weak try to survive, they will die. If there are fewer offspring, all you have to do is recreate as many as possible. That was the rule of the Delta family tribe. Then Delta wants Shadow to become chief of her village by defeating Delta's father. When Shadow became chief of the tribe, Shadow could play with many half-beast women like Delta. Then, they gave birth to many children and became the most powerful race. Even Delta is ready to give birth to more than 100 children if Shadow becomes chief. Well, an offer that is very, very, very beyond reason, and maybe enjoyable. On the other hand, Garter reported to Getan that Zabra, the Leaf 4 from the Clovers, had died. MCAS' secret place was destroyed, and there were no people left. Garter is very worried because Mitsugoshi's strength is extraordinary. Then Getan told Garter to use the other Clovers members again. Clovers is a group that Getan created to protect MCA and attack Mitsugoshi. Getan is confident that the other Clovers members can defeat Mitsugoshi's troops. One day, Alpha and the others discuss sending goods from their base to Midgar City. Recently, MCA has rarely attacked Mitsugoshi's freight trains. Even MCA could barely dominate the market even though they had created their own version of banknotes. That way, MCA will definitely destroy itself. Not long after, New reported that some people would sneak into Mitsugoshi and sneak attack. They are Clovers who were ordered by Garter to attack Mitsugoshi. Alpha and the others have also investigated MCA. That control of Garter has been taken over by Getan. Initially, Alpha ordered New to kill the Clovers members, but Gamma suddenly volunteered to do this. Of course, everyone there was shocked because they knew Gamma's fighting style. Kai and Omega help Gamma to carry out a sudden mission from Alpha. When they meet the Clovers, Kai and Omega immediately attack them, and then Gamma will face the leader of the Clovers, Leaf 1. The next day, Garter reported to Getan that the Clovers had failed their mission. None of the Clovers members have returned to headquarters since last night. After hearing this, Getan told Garter to do something so he could keep attacking Mitsugoshi. In Getan's mind, the Clovers group he created was not as high level as the children group. Clovers only contain talented bandits who have magical abilities, but Getan will not give up with the conditions he is experiencing now. One day, Sid met Alexia, and Alexia invited him to practice swords like they did before. A few minutes later, Alexia was able to throw Sid's sword away and defeat him. After that, Alexia invited Sid to the city center where they had their first fake date. After buying a steamed bun, they chatted on the same stairs as when they had a fake date at that time. Sid says that Alexia's abilities have begun to develop. Her sword technique was much better than before. Sid is confident that Alexia will grow even better. Alexia said that she felt she needed even more power. When Rose was in trouble, Alexia couldn't do anything to help her. Rose struggles alone to overcome Oriana's kingdom problems. Alexia feels useless as Rose's friend. Because of this, she would train very hard to gain even greater strength. Even though Alexia still has shortcomings, she won't just give up. If Alexia remains silent and doesn't do anything, the people closest to her will stay away from her. The earth continues to spin. If Alexia stops walking, she will be far behind. After seeing all the irregularities and the fight between Shadow Garden and the Diabolos cult, Alexia didn't want to stand still and just see how the fight ended. Well, Alexia understands that her wishes are very strange, but this is the only thing Alexia can do as time passes. Then Alexia gave the steamed bun she had already eaten partly to Sid. Alexia also says that Sid has too relaxed a life, but Alexia hopes that Sid will remain himself and can always be relaxed like that. After that, John met with Yukime because fake money was being made en masse. This counterfeit money manufacturing factory is in a secret place abandoned by the Diabolos cult. More precisely, the secret place where Claire was held at that time. Then Yukime was sure that John would be happy because the counterfeit money was made as closely as possible to the design of the MCA money. Even John couldn't tell the difference between real and fake. Actually, John could still see the difference between the two banknotes through his magic. In contrast to Yukime, who cannot differentiate between the two banknotes. John was quite amazed because the counterfeit money made by Yukime was of higher quality than MCA's real money. Even so, John still ordered Yukime to distribute this. Ordinary people will not be able to know it quickly. Only John could detect the differences between the two banknotes in detail. John will also take care of and look after the distribution of counterfeit money. Then Yukime said that if John met a sword demon named Geton, Yukime would ask John to let him go. Yukime wants to kill Geton in her own hands. Geton has taken everything of value from Yukime. After hearing this, John only advised, "Don't let your heart be blinded by your feelings of revenge." John hopes Yukime doesn't get caught in that vicious circle that will destroy her life. After several weeks, Gamma reported to Alpha that fake MCA notes were circulating on the market. The origin of the counterfeit money is also unknown. Residents are still not aware of the existence of this counterfeit money. In fact, MCA continues to issue as many banknotes as possible. Initially, Alpha thought that the threat was only aimed at MCA, but suddenly, Alpha realized something about the meaning of this counterfeit money. If citizens' trust in banknotes declines, MCA and Mitsugoshi will be destroyed instantly, as citizens demand their gold coins be returned. Then Alpha told Gamma to order the Shadow Garden members to find the source of the counterfeit money. According to Alpha, the mastermind behind this counterfeit money was a genius, because the mastermind knew how to destroy both banks at once. Alpha was curious about who the genius mastermind was, and what the mastermind's purpose was in doing all this. News about the counterfeit money also reached MCA. When Garter reported this to Geton, Geton told Garter to find out who the perpetrator was who had counterfeited their money. Currently, the number of MCA banknotes in circulation is more than the value of the gold coins in the MCA vault. Geton also thinks that Mitsugoshi is experiencing this right now. He understood that this counterfeit money could cause doubts among residents. Likely, residents will also demand that the bank return their gold coins equivalent to their banknotes. Initially, this case was a plan belonging to Geton and the Diabolos cult. They will obtain MCA's hidden assets. After getting the assets, Geton will make counterfeit money to destroy MCA and Mitsugoshi. Even so, other people apparently carried out this counterfeit money strategy first. A few days later, Gamma ordered 664, 665, and 666 or Rose to sneak into a freight train from the lawless city to Midgar City. Then, several other teams will look for the whereabouts of the factory making counterfeit money. 664 warned Rose not to act hastily on her own. As a team leader, 664 has been very troubled by Rose's behavior since yesterday. Even with every mission given by Alpha or 7 Shadows, 664 didn't understand why Rose was always like that. But most importantly, Rose had to focus on the mission because she was already in Shadow Garden. When they got into the train, they were confused because this train had no guards. But Rose suddenly noticed a thread that was there.
何者だ。
ジョン・スミス。
これちょっと硬い。
だが一撃にかけるには未熟だったな。
John Smith succeeded in capturing those who were almost unaware of the existence of these threats. John already knew that Shadow Garden would be the one who would head to this train first. Then John ordered them to go home because they couldn't find out more about this. Initially, Rose still wanted to catch up on that freight train, but 664 detained Rose because they had failed their mission tonight. 664 will report John Smith's information to Gamma later. In Rose's mind, she was still having a very hard time dealing with the problems she was experiencing. The Oriana Kingdom was chaotic because Rose's father, or the King of Oriana, had died at her hands. Meanwhile, Rose suddenly disappeared after the God of War festival incident, and then joined Shadow Garden. Rose felt she had not found the right solution for Oriana Kingdom problem.
私はなぜどうして弱い。
After 664 reported about John Smith to Alpha and Gamma, Alpha and Gamma were surprised because they never knew John Smith's name. Most likely, John Smith was a great man in a lawless city. Even John could fight the number of members from Shadow Garden easily. Then Rose immediately gave additional reports that John had extraordinary strength. He seemed to be able to read all his enemies' movements. Even his strength was the same as 7 shadows. Then 664 immediately forbade Rose to say any more. She didn't want Rose to act rashly, and 664 immediately took Rose out of the room. Then Gamma and Alpha continued their chat. They have sent Zeta and Victoria to investigate somewhere. The Diablos cult may be planning something more than Mitsugoshi and MCAS rivalry. Then, Alpha decides to order Delta to kill John Smith. John managed to avoid and fight back against Delta's attacks. But when John wanted to tell Delta to go home, Delta suddenly smelled a scent she knew very well. In fact, she jumped on John because she knew John's identity. Because of that, Shadow took Delta to another carriage to chat. Initially, Delta was ordered by Alpha to kill someone named John, but there was no way Delta could do that. Even Delta had no chance of winning against him. Then Delta wants to report John Smith's identity to Alpha, but Shadow was honest with Delta that he was on a super secret mission. This mission can only be carried out by Shadow, who is disguised as super elite agent John Smith. If Delta reports this to Alpha, Shadow's secret mission will fail. Initially, Delta wanted to go with Shadow on the mission, but Shadow didn't allow Delta to come with him. Shadow understands that Delta is carrying out an absolute mission from Alpha. Because of this, Shadow gave Delta a new mission: hunt down a guy named Juggernaut in the Lawless City, or rather, the Black Tower. In Shadow Garden's rules, Shadow's orders must be obeyed more than anyone else. Any currently underway mission must be postponed or cancelled, and Shadow's mission must be prioritized. Shadow also would give Delta whatever reward she wanted if she succeeded in hunting Juggernaut. But this reward has certain limitations. Of course, Delta was very happy after hearing that because she could ask for anything from Shadow. Yes, anything. But anything Delta meant was to make 100 children with Shadow. Then Delta went straight to the Lawless City to carry out Shadow's mission. Well, Shadow understood that Delta must be thinking about asking something strange again like before. The next day, Alpha received news from Gamma that Delta had not returned to base since last night. There were only traces of Delta's hair at yesterday's fierce fight scene. Delta couldn't possibly just abandon the mission from Alpha. Because of this, Gamma and the other Shadow Garden members thought Delta had died at the hands of John Smith. After hearing that, Alpha was shocked and felt very confused. She told Gamma and the other team to look for Delta's body. At the very least, they should find her and give her a proper burial. Alpha is very angry and vengeful towards John Smith now, starting from the counterfeit money plan and Delta's death. According to Alpha, John is not an ordinary person who only aims for big profits, but he also wants to take the Midgar City market so that it can become the focus of his trade.
捜索は続けて。せめて遺体の回収だけでも。ジョン・ス スミス。
On the other hand, MCA is very confused because people are starting to doubt the value of bandnotes now. But Getten said that whatever happened, Garter's subordinates had to find out who produced the counterfeit money. One day, Iris met Alexia, who was carrying stacks of books. Iris was confused. Why did Alexia come to Midgar Palace even though it was a holiday today? Then Alexia said that she wanted to learn from many vocational books. Midgar School hasn't finished renovating, so Alexia decided to study at the palace. Of course, Iris is surprised because she thought Alexia wanted to be a nerd and keep the sword forever. Alexia explains that she still wants to practice swordsmanship as usual. But Alexia has to study various majors too. It would be pointless if Alexia only understood how to use a sword. Actually, Alexia still talks at length about her intention to study, but Iris didn't want to listen to Alexia's words anymore and immediately left there. At night, Beta reported all the incidents regarding counterfeit money and John Smith to Shadow. The Midgar Kingdom will soon intervene to solve the problems in the capital. But Shadow only listened to Beta's words because he was writing an important memo. Then Beta also reported about Delta's expected death when fighting John Smith. Of course, Shadow immediately shakes and says that Delta is just going somewhere far away. Then Beta wants Shadow to fight John directly. John's strength is extraordinary and difficult to defeat. But Shadow refused because he had something else to do. Then Shadow showed a memo containing Arabic numbers and the Japanese language. He feels very cool now because he can make Japanese letters as code in this world. Then Shadow asked Beta to explain the meaning of the sentence he wrote. One night, Yukime's subordinates report that the rail line to enter the capital of Midgar is already blocked. But John continued the delivery and broke the blockade on the rail line. It turns out that two people were ordered by Garter to stop the train from Lawless City, but they failed, and the train continued heading to Midgar City. Not long after, John saw Alpha, and they fought fiercely on the train.
はじめまして、ジョン・スミス。そしてさようなら。この動き、この間合い。この技の際は。
Alpha finally realizes that John Smith is actually Shadow. Of course, Alpha is very angry and sad. Why are you doing all this, Shadow? Where's Delta? Then Shadow replies that he has dropped the name Shadow, and he is now John Smith. John has sent Delta to a faraway place. After hearing this, Alpha misunderstood what John meant, and still thought that John had killed Delta. Then, Alpha released her power to fight John. She didn't know John's purpose in committing a betrayal like this, even though Alpha has always tried to understand John because he was precious to her.
あなたにとってもう必要ないの。私を救ってくれたあなたのために私はあなたを支えたいの。理解したいのよ。
霧は質量が軽い。
あなたを支えることだってできるの。私を置いていかないで。
A few weeks later, residents started exchanging their bandnotes for gold coins again. This put MCA and Mitsugoshi banks under great pressure. Even their gold coin assets have almost run out in the safe. MCA also closed several bank branches to minimize the exchange of these bandnotes. But this is also what makes citizens increasingly believe that the value of paper money is really not comparable to gold coins. Then Garter reported to Getten that the mastermind who made the counterfeit money was not yet known. But what is certain is that the goods train that entered the Midgar capital came from the Snow Fox Company led by Yukime. Of course, Getten was shocked and angry because it turned out that Yukime was involved in this counterfeit money case. On the other hand, Gamma discussed with the Shadow Garden members about the current situation. Beta has also given Etta an important memo from Shadow, and Etta tried her best to translate it. A few days later, Gamma reported today's situation to Alpha. But unfortunately, Alpha always pondered after finding out that John Smith was actually Shadow. She was very sad because Shadow no longer needed her. Even so, Gamma still believed that Shadow couldn't possibly do something that cruel. But Alpha said that Shadow no longer needed Shadow Garden. The members of Shadow Garden had failed to live up to his expectations. Because of that, Shadow threw them away and chose to go to a place they couldn't reach. Alpha's pessimism also spread to Gamma, who felt very sad due to Shadow's betrayal of his own organization.
失礼します。
Then New reported to Alpha that Getten was apparently a member of the Diabolos cult. In order to destroy Mitsugoshi, Getten plans to make fake money. Even though they didn't know about Mitsugoshi's background, they remained alert until they made this plan. After hearing that, Alpha immediately realized something about Shadow's treasonous intentions. This means that Shadow already knew Getten's plan earlier than the Shadow Garden members. Because of this, Shadow deliberately made fake money and circulated it before Getten. Then Beta also reported that the important memo code from Shadow had been successfully translated by Eda. And when Alpha read the memo for a few minutes,
君たちは恨むかもしれないけど、昔みんなで姉さんを救出したあの施設に貯めている。これまでの名を捨て、協力者と偽札を作ることとなった。
ある計画のために。悪いけど、僕は裏切ることにするよ。
僕はこの選択が
最善だったと思っているよ。
with that many gold coins, Mitsugoshi could restore the residents' sense of trust. Then Getten will lose MCA and all the assets there. Not long after, Alpha called Delta, who had just quietly returned to base. Of course, they are very happy and grateful that Delta is still alive. Delta tries to explain what happened, but she is confused by the situation she is currently experiencing. According to Delta, Alpha and the others were very strange today.
無事でよかった。
On the other hand, John continues to kill Garter's subordinates who want to know the mastermind behind the counterfeit money. He had been having fun doing this for months. Yukime also left a message to John that the gold coins collected could belong to John. This made John very happy because he could become very rich in preparation for living another 300 years. Currently, Yukime was going somewhere, so John took the time to go to the counterfeit money factory first. He plans to create another cool storyline after bringing all the gold coins there. But it turned out that John's gold coins had disappeared in an instant. Of course, John was shocked after learning about this. Not long after, Yukime's subordinates reported that Getten probably already knew the location of this factory. But they were also surprised because the gold coins stored there had just disappeared, even though they had just received news that Getten's subordinates would soon be coming to this factory. Then John was angry with Getten because he had taken all John's gold coins that easily.
絶対に返してもらう。貴様は私の大切なものに手を出した。
At the same time, Getten meets Yukime to solve the problem of counterfeit money in a large snowfield. Of course, Yukime immediately took revenge because Getten had killed everyone in Yukime's village first, including her mother. In fact, they have been engaged for a long time and spent many beautiful days together. However, all this changed because Getten was forced by the Diabolos cult to become part of them. John finally came to know where Getten had hidden the gold coins. But unfortunately, John didn't ask Getten straight to the point. He simply asked, "You have something valuable, right? You took it, right? I just came to reclaim something precious." After hearing that, Getten was surprised because he thought that what John meant was Yukime. Of course, this made Getten angry because John had also ruined his plans. John cooperate with Yukime so that MCA can be destroyed like now. Meanwhile, Yukime, who saw their fight, also misunderstood. She thought that John had come there to save her even though the cooperation contract only applied to the counterfeit money scheme. Then John asked Getten to say something he had to say now. John would have continued to beat Getten to death if he hadn't said it. After hearing that, Getten and Yukime misunderstood John's meaning again. John also didn't understand what they meant from the start of this fight because all John wanted was gold coins. Then Getten finally gave up and pointed at Yukime. What Getten meant was that he entrusted Yukime's life to John. Getten actually still loves Yukime and asks John to help look after her. But John didn't think like that. Instead, he thought that Getten had buried the gold coins he had stolen right under Yukime. Moreover, John only heard the faint sound of Getten saying Yuki. In Japanese, Yuki means snow. Then Getten finally realized that John was the strongest person he had met in Yukime village. After Getten died, John immediately healed Yukime's wounds, and Yukime also finally realized that John was the masked boy who had saved her at that time.
上手です。ありがとう。
Well, basically everything that happened tonight was just a misunderstanding. If you don't understand the comedy in this moment, it means your taste in comedy isn't like this. Then Yukime returned to the counterfeit money factory and met Alpha there. After Alpha introduces herself to Yukime, she gives her a letter. The letter was taken by Shadow Garden from Getan's room. MCA will soon be destroyed after the Midgar Kingdom finds out about all these events. Even the gold coins in Yukime's factory were taken by Shadow Garden within seconds. In the letter it was written that Getan really loved Yukime. Then Alpha said that Getan had been influenced by the Diabolos cult. Because of that, he became what he is today. Alpha also wants to form an alliance with Yukime because this could be a symbiotic mutualism for them. Alpha explained that Mitsugoshi was actually managed by Shadow Garden, and Shadow had planned the entire attack from the start before the Shadow Garden members made their move. Then Yukime agreed to make an alliance with Shadow Garden. Of course, Mitsugoshi's market could also benefit the Snow Fox Company. All residents of the Midgar capital have trusted Mitsugoshi again, and their bandnotes can continue to operate and circulate as usual. On the other hand, Iris and her subordinates forcibly open the MCA safe. Of course, all the gold coin assets there have been used up. The Kingdom of Midgar asks Garter to explain what really happened. Let's go back to the previous snowfield. Shadow has been digging there for days and has not found the gold coins that Getan buried. Shadow even invited Delta to continue this secret mission. Shadow didn't understand what was really going on. Yukime doesn't contact him anymore, and Mitsugoshi also seems fine. This was a strange thing for Shadow because it seemed like nothing had happened. Then Delta demanded Shadow's promise to comply with all her requests. But Shadow still says that he can't comply with Delta's requests that are beyond his limits because Shadow is not Santa Claus. Delta didn't understand the meaning of Santa Claus that Shadow said. After they chatted for a long time, Shadow still didn't find the gold coins. Because of this, he left a message to Delta that he would be leaving for a while. In Shadow's mind, he couldn't return to headquarters because it was likely that the Shadow Garden members would be very angry with him. Therefore, Shadow immediately left as quickly as possible to undertake a journey that was quite challenging for him. He is sure that the storyline he will develop later can make him as cool as he is now. After Shadow moves away from his dig with Delta, Delta suddenly finds something. Now we have entered the story in episode 8. Actually, there is nothing important to tell. Everything in episode 8 is just fanservice and brings out the characters of the girls who become your wives. I'm just telling the gist of the story. A few weeks later, the Mitsugoshi Hot Springs were officially opened to the public. Of course, the members of Shadow Garden also tried out the hot springs, especially Seven Shadows. Well, you definitely understand that moments like this always have something to do with bikini clothes. Eda also shows various kinds of products or research results there. She even offered Shadow Garden members to wear magic jelly that can be shaped into anything, including invisible bikinis. But Alpha forbade them to use the jelly.
スケスケにもできる。スケスケスケスケは禁止よ。こんな風にただ遊ぶのなんていつ以来かしら。やっぱり私が選ばれるべきでしたわ。いいじゃない。やるじゃんバカ犬。バカなんてメスネカ。たまれメスネカ。
The Shadow Garden members really enjoyed the atmosphere there. We can even see how beautiful Nu is when wearing a bikini. Not only that, we can see how sweet Lambda is when managing activities there. There are many moments in episode 8, and I can't explain them one by one. There are vulgar moments, and there are just casual moments. Even Seven Shadow wears the uniform in the season 1 opening. Several weeks later, 664's team stayed at a place in the Oriana Kingdom. The inn is managed by Marie, a prostitute who comes from a lawless city. It turned out that Sid was also there, who had lived longer than them. But 664's team doesn't know that Sid is Shadow. Even Rose didn't realize Sid's existence because Rose spent most of her time in her room. Marie opened this inn business in the Oriana Kingdom area. She told Sid that the city's conditions had been getting worse for months. The king of Oriana is dead and Rose's whereabouts are unknown. Sid felt that he had to do something to find Shadow's true identity. The next day, Rose had a nightmare about the king being killed by her. Rose couldn't do anything so far even though she had joined Shadow Garden. Not long after, 664 told Rose to immediately get ready to go around the city. and meet 559 or Victoria at night. After they met Victoria, they reported the details of their next mission. 664's team and Victoria will investigate the Diabolos cult further tonight. Victoria and Zeta have been scouting the Diabolos cult there for a long time, but they have not found any significant movement from the cult. 664's team and Victoria will look for another way in because the main road to the Oriana Kingdom will be impassable. In fact, Victoria deliberately chose 664's team to help her with this investigation. Victoria already knew that Rose was the Princess Oriana who controlled this kingdom. Victoria told Rose to show her the road and details of the area there. Victoria also knows about Rose's powers. Victoria and Rose are special people who are blessed with extraordinary powers from shadows outside of the 7 shadows. But Victoria saw that Rose was a weak girl even though Shadow had given her strength. According to Victoria, Rose doesn't belong in Shadow Garden.
あのお方にふさわしくないものは排除する。私はシャドウ様の忠実なるしもべ。だが、弱いな。
Actually, there was a war that hit the Oriana Kingdom. Because of this, the Diabolos cult took part in the war and sent the Children's Army to take control of the Oriana Kingdom. Shadow Garden still hasn't found any information. Why did the Diabolos cult want to control the Oriana Kingdom for a long time? Not long after, they saw the movement of the Diabolos cult heading somewhere. Rose said that the path the cult took was the path to the ruins. The ruins were long ago created to honor the warrior Oriana who fought against the demon Diabolos. After they arrived at the ruins, they saw that Kuodoi of the first children was leading this army. Then Kuodoi immediately opened something on the altar with the same card as Archbishop Nelson used. Rose did not expect that the altar in the city of Lindberm was also in the Oriana Kingdom. Not long after, Rose's mother, Reina, came to break the seal on the altar. Of course, Rose was surprised after learning about this and she didn't understand why her mother could obey the orders of the Diabolos cult troops. Victoria, who saw this, also continued to stare at Rose. I can understand the meaning of Victoria's gaze, but the most important thing is that Victoria's background is closely related to the town of Lindberm. If I explain Victoria's part in more detail, this video would definitely be longer. After the altar seal was opened, Kuodoi took a ring known as the key. Then Victoria ordered 664's team to prepare for battle with the Children Army. Of course, they were surprised by Victoria's sudden decision. Victoria explains briefly that she knows the ring is the key. Because of this, Shadow Garden must immediately seize the key and kill the Children Army as quickly as possible, including Rose's mother. Even though Victoria is not one of the 7 shadows, she can still order the members to do things according to her orders. Of course, 664's team was confused about the key Victoria meant, but Victoria didn't want to explain this because they didn't have much time left. Then Rose tried to stop Victoria, but Victoria didn't care about Rose and continued with her plan. Rose managed to withstand Victoria's attack, and her mother was very frightened by this situation. Then Victoria decided to expel Rose from Shadow Garden because Rose did not deserve to be Shadow's follower. Of course, Victoria will kill everyone there at once.
処刑の時間だ。
The next day, New reported to Gamma about 664's team and Victoria who were fighting against the children troops in the Oriana Kingdom area. Then Rose saw her mother there, and Rose was in Oriana's palace now. Dome also looks like he is rushing to carry out all kinds of activities to satisfy his superior, Mordred, a member of the 9th seat of the Knights of Rounds. Dome had promised Mordred to improve his performance at that time. Shadow Garden has actually been providing resistance to the Diabolos cult in the Oriana Kingdom for a long time, but this couldn't make Mordred appear in front of them. Mordred is the ruler behind the scenes who has helped Dome a lot so far in the Oriana Kingdom, starting from the King of Oriana who has been made into a walking doll, then hunting for Rose, and even Dome can get a ring as a key. Currently, the Oriana Kingdom is experiencing a lot of controversy and conflict. Many residents obeyed Dome's orders and vice versa. Even though Rose was held hostage by the Diabolos cult now, Shadow Garden could still have an advantage in the war later. Then Gamma told New to give a message to Lambda to prepare the Shadow Garden troops as soon as possible. On the other hand, Sid was having breakfast prepared by Marie. He's also thinking of ways to be really cool in the storyline he's creating now. Sid knows that Rose wants to be the next successor to the throne of the Oriana Kingdom, but Sid still doesn't understand. Why did Rose kill her own father? Is it because she doesn't want to be married by Doem? Even though Sid didn't understand the current situation, he still believed in Rose after seeing the determination she showed at that time. According to Sid, if Rose succeeds in becoming the successor to the Oriana Kingdom, she will definitely remember Sid as the character who supported her struggle all this time. It was the best and very cool moment for Sid, who was playing the role of a coward. Not long after, there were bandits who collected money as support for government troops in the city of Oriana. The bandits actually only took advantage of this situation for their own benefit. Marie initially couldn't give them the money because she had already given it to them a few days ago, but the bandits still forced Marie to pay. They even allowed Marie to pay with her sexy body. Of course, Sid immediately helped Marie in a very cowardly way. Then Sid apologizes to Marie for not being able to look after her money. Marie didn't mind it because she was used to being roughed up by men like that. Marie thanks Sid for helping her. Then Sid will leave there to have another adventure in the city of Oriana. Sid wants to pay rent for the room he is already using, but Marie refused because Sid had helped her from the bandits earlier. Marie is worried about Sid's condition, but Sid convinces Marie not to worry about it. At night, Sid saw the bandits who had stolen Marie's money. Of course, Sid immediately steals all their money for his savings for the next 300 years.
あの宿の姉ちゃんとかどういう。
結局またこれを売るしかないか。今月の家賃どころか明日の仕入れにも。
つまり僕が正義だ。
On the other hand, Victoria and 664's team are still fighting against the children troops. But unfortunately, 664 and 665 had collapsed because they were unable to fight the children troops. Even so, Kuodoi was surprised that Victoria was still able to fight for 3 days. However, Victoria's magic power has begun to weaken, and this is Kuodoi's chance to kill her. Not long after, Shadow came to help Victoria, 664, and 665. Victoria truly dedicates herself only to Shadow. She even considers Shadow her god. After Shadow heals 664 and 665, Victoria reports the events at the ruins to Shadow. She considered that 666 had become a traitor and deserved the death penalty. Due to 666's behavior, Shadow Garden failed to get the key. Of course, 664 and 665 denied Victoria's words because 666 was not that kind of person. They were also annoyed because Victoria didn't explain what the key meant. Well, even though they were babbling, Shadow still didn't understand what was going on right now. Not long after, Shadow saw a newspaper showing the news that Rose had returned to the Oriana Kingdom. Rose has even declared her marriage to Doam in the near future. Of course, Shadow was very confused and angry because he didn't understand what Rose was thinking. In Shadow's mind, he really needed Rose as queen of the Oriana Kingdom. This is necessary to enhance his role in the storyline that Shadow has created. Then Shadow wanted to ask Rose for an explanation and immediately headed to where she was. The next day, Lambda took the Shadow Garden troops from the base to the inn in the city of Oriana. Omega and Kai welcome Lambda and they discuss Rose. Lambda feels guilty for failing to educate Rose as a member of Shadow Garden. But Omega and Kai say that Lambda doesn't need to feel that way. Rose seems to have her own problems that are making her unstable. But Rose's punishment stands, and Shadow will carry it out. 7 Shadow and the other members couldn't do anything because Rose's punishment was in Shadow's hands. On the other hand, Shadow managed to arrive at the area near Oriana Palace. He heard various kinds of anger from residents towards Rose. They blamed Rose for killing her own father and just running away. But Sid didn't care what they said. Then Sid thought of a way to get into the palace. He couldn't fly because it was still daytime. Not long afterward, Epsilon accidentally met Sid there and she immediately took Sid to Oriana Palace. Epsilon explained that the people of the Oriana Kingdom really appreciated art. Whether they are nobles or ordinary people, they can be recognized and respected if they have artistic value in themselves. There is only one thing that is not respected in the Kingdom of Oriana: when someone chooses to become a swordsman. Epsilon was a great pianist and was usually called Shillon. By the way, I don't need to explain the details of Epsilon's existence in the Oriana Kingdom. I explained the story about Epsilon becoming a pianist in the first season. Then Epsilon whispers to Sid that Shadow Garden's troops have sneaked into Oriana Palace. Their disguise is still unknown to Doam and his troops. Not long after, they met Doam and chatted there for a while. Then Doam asked Epsilon, "Who is the man you are with now?" Then Epsilon answered, "He is my best student." However, Doam is doubtful about admission permits for Shilon's student. Shilon said her student do not need to use such entry permits. Then Doam said that there were new changes to the rules that were implemented today. But Doam made an exception for Shilon, as long as her student could appear at today's lunch event. Lunchtime arrived, and Sid saw a lot of luxurious jewelry worn by the nobles there. Of course, Sid can make a lot of money from the jewelry. When Sid played the notes on the piano, everyone was amazed to hear how beautiful the song Sid played was. Sid takes this opportunity to take all the jewelry from the nobles, including the key that Doam brought with him. After that, Epsilon and Sid rested in the VIP room with drinks that had just been served by the maid there. Then Sid deliberately takes Epsilon on a tour of the palace. Epsilon understands Sid's intentions and she agrees to accompany him. But suddenly the maid offered herself to accompany Sid. At first Sid didn't want to, but the maid remained stubborn in wanting to accompany Sid. The maid's name was Margaret. She is fully responsible for Rose and Shilon's condition in this palace. Then Sid is forced to accept Margaret's offer. Actually, the maid had an ulterior motive. She was even willing to tease Sid with her breasts. Margaret explained that the temperature in this palace can be maintained because there are artifacts underground. She is also amazed by Sid's previous piano performance. Because of this, Margaret offers Sid to work for her family. Sid can get satisfaction with a very large salary there. Margaret increasingly tempts Sid to work with her family. Yes, that was Margaret's hidden intention, but Sid didn't care about the offer. Instead, Sid asks Margaret about Rose's room. Then Margaret said that Rose's room was actually very secret. But Margaret told him the location because she thought Sid was the most special person. However, Margaret really hated Rose because Rose had killed the king of Oriana, and as a result the Oriana kingdom became very chaotic after the king's death. Then Sid immediately went to Rose's balcony bedroom secretly. Of course, Rose was surprised and immediately went to Sid while crying. Rose invited Sid into the room as quickly as possible before other people discovered his whereabouts. In Sid's mind, Sid would act as if he was speaking very coolly and dramatically in front of Rose. Then Sid says that he really missed Rose, and he was able to get into the palace thanks to disguising himself as a student of a famous pianist. Sid also asked about Rose's marriage to Doam. "Why are you doing this? Didn't you want to be the successor to the king of Oriana?" Then Rose asked Sid not to talk about it, and Sid should forget Rose as soon as possible. After hearing this, Sid looked deeply into Rose's eyes and said a sentence that made Rose's heart love him even more. Sid doesn't want Rose to marry Doam. He wanted Rose to remain in her own opinion and not be controlled by her sadness. Sid said that Rose was a brave woman because she managed to become a great swordswoman. Even though the people of the Oriana kingdom didn't appreciate this, Rose still fought as hard as she could to prove it. Sid understands that Rose has been very lonely all this time. Even so, Rose can still live her life in the path she chooses herself. Whatever obstacles we face, we can definitely believe in the path of life that we have determined. Sid sees that Rose is trying to move away from the way of life she should be living. Sid is sure that in Rose's heart doesn't want to marry Doam, and Sid really needs Rose. Not long after, Doam came because there were reports that Rose was talking to someone in her room. Of course, Rose denied that there was no one else in her room. But Doam saw traces of tears in Rose's eyes and immediately strangled her. Doam wants Rose not to take any more action because they will soon get married. Rose said that Doam marrying her was just a formality. Then Doam strangled Rose even harder because Rose's mother's life was in Rose's hands. If Rose did as she pleased, Rihanna would be killed immediately. It turns out that Sid heard their conversation from Rose's balcony bedroom. Because of this, Sid will do something again so that Rose can move freely in this palace. Sid also thinks the ring he stole from Doam is their wedding ring, even though we know that the ring is the key that Shadow Garden is looking for. At night, Epsilon was resting at the Shadow Garden Inn with Victoria. Epsilon did not blame Victoria for her failure in the mission to seize the key that night. In fact, it was Seven Shadows' fault for not telling Rose about Reincarnated. In fact, it was Seven Shadows' fault for not telling Rose about Reina. According to Epsilon, Shadow definitely has other plans to solve Rose's problem. Seven Shadows would not be able to understand Shadow's intentions, so they just need to provide support and wait for Shadow's signal. The most important thing is that Shadow Garden must get the key. If the legend about the Black Rose is true, then this disaster could destroy the Oriana Kingdom. The Black Rose disaster occurred when the Vegalta Kingdom was at war with the Oriana Kingdom in ancient times. 100,000 Vegalta troops could be wiped out in just one night through this disaster. If Shadow Garden acted hastily, the Diabolos cult would definitely take advantage of the Black Rose disaster by activating the key. On the other hand, Dome reported his performance to Mordred. He was sure that Mordred would not be disappointed with his plan this time. Dome has got the key and will marry Rose. Control of the Oriana Kingdom will soon be in his hands. Then Mordred said that if Dome's plan was successful this time, Mordred would prepare 12 seat nights of rounds for him.
継承の指輪は常に私が肌身離さずに。シャドウガーデン、何するものぞ。
On the other hand, Zeta and the Shadow Garden members are attacking the Diabolos cult's research site. Zeta wants to find the tools that Mordred kept in the research room, but unfortunately, Mordred had taken the tool with him. On the other hand, Sid thinks that Rose's mother is also being held hostage by Dome. Because of that, Sid plans to see how Rose's mother is doing now. When Sid was chatting with Epsilon, Epsilon said that the impact of the Black Rose was huge. At least, this disaster will not happen again if Shadow Garden can complete the mission well. After hearing this, Sid was actually interested in seeing the Black Rose disaster in the Oriana Kingdom, although Sid doesn't understand anything about the disaster. Of course, Epsilon was surprised that Sid would say something like that, but Epsilon still appreciates it if that's what Sid wants. Then Sid immediately looked for Rose's mother there, but when Sid found her, Sid was very disgusted after seeing what Rose's mother was doing. Sid left there and thought that there was a very painful drama in the Oriana Kingdom, but Sid still has to show this to Rose to raise her confidence. Sid acts like this because he wants Rose to be the successor to the King of Oriana. At evening, Shadow suddenly visited Rose's room, and Rose was very afraid because she had betrayed Shadow. Rose apologized because she had returned Shadow's kindness in such an evil way. But Shadow didn't care about that, and he immediately took Rose to her mother's balcony bedroom. Their whereabouts are unknown, perhaps thanks to Shadow's magic. Then Shadow told Rose to look into her mother's room, and Rose was finally able to see the truth behind all the events in the Oriana Kingdom months ago.
ローズを最初に殺しておくべきだったのよ。
殺さなければもっと役に立った。
いい操り人形になってくれたわ。バカな夫に薬を持った甲斐があったでしょ。ド M、 もうすぐこの国は私たちのものなのね。
愛してるのはハニーだけだよ。もう少し待ってくれハニー。結婚式を終えればローズは用済みさ。
It turns out that Reina conspired with Dome and deliberately let the King of Oriana become a puppet for the Diabolos cult. Their plan could have gone smoothly if Rose had been captured at that time. But they finally changed plans, and Dome deliberately wanted to get married as soon as possible with Rose. After Dome marries her, Dome will kill Rose and he can take control of the Oriana Kingdom. Rose is shocked after learning the truth, and Shadow asks Rose to get back up. Let out her anger at the right time because within 3 days, his wedding to Dome will soon take place. At first, Shadow continued to say cool words to arouse Rose's anger even more. But unfortunately, Rose had fainted and Shadow immediately took Rose to her room. After a while, Rose was still shocked to remember her mother's behavior like that. She continued to cry until her eyes were full of swollen from tears. Not long after, she saw Sid's figure outside her balcony bedroom. Of course, Rose wanted Sid to go as far as possible with her from the Oriana Kingdom. If Rose was with Sid, she could definitely be happy forever. Rose was banished and ignored by her people because she had killed the King of Oriana. Rose has also been betrayed by her own mother. She had given up because she couldn't turn things around in the Oriana Kingdom. In fact, she has betrayed the organization that has helped her all this time, especially Shadow. Then Sid explained something about music that I didn't understand the meaning of. The most important thing is that Sid continues to encourage Rose. Sid also uses his voice as a shadow figure so that Rose can remain strong in living this life.
月に照らされた世界、貴様には何が見える?
Rose doesn't yet know that Sid is actually Shadow. She thought that it was just her imagination. But Rose saw a ring there that Shadow Garden had been after since the beginning of the mission in the Oriana Kingdom. Of course, Rose kept the key because this could possibly be a turning point where the Oriana Kingdom could be in her hands again. On the other hand, Sid actually accidentally dropped the ring. Even Sid thought that the ring was just an ordinary wedding ring, and Sid wanted to sell it when his role in the Oriana Kingdom was finished. Then Sid bathes in the hot springs with Epsilon and discusses Rose's battle, which will soon occur. Sid also said that he had given the main key to arousing Rose's anger. Of course, Epsilon assumes that Sid gave the key to Rose directly, but what Sid means is that he succeeded in uncovering the real truth as the main key to the turning point in Rose's current situation. Sid doesn't understand anything about the ring or the key. Then the Shadow Garden members decided not to look for the whereabouts of the key. Solving this problem depends on how Rose does it later. The night of Doem's wedding ceremony is about to begin. The residents who opposed the marriage were immediately killed by Doem's troops with weapons. On the other hand, Doem is very happy because he can get what he wants soon. The ring is a system where if the king of Oriana dies, the ring will automatically give the throne of the Oriana kingdom to the successor, who has been determined by the king of Oriana. Doem could become the heir to the Oriana kingdom if he marries Rose. Then enter Doem's blood data into the ring to become part of the king of Oriana's bloodline. When Doem was very happy, he opened the ring box he had kept for days, and he was surprised because the key was missing. Doem panicked and he couldn't believe that the items he had been guarding could just disappear, even though Doem always put the ring box in his clothes pocket. Not long after, Mordred contacted Doem that the preparations for tonight were perfect, so Mordred will wait for Doem's success to control the Oriana kingdom. When the wedding ceremony began, Doem was still looking for the whereabouts of the key. On the other hand, Sid has played the piano to accompany the wedding ceremony. The disguises of the Shadow Garden members were also ready in their respective positions. After the priest finished pronouncing the wedding vows to Rose and Doem, Rose said that she was not willing to marry Doem. Of course, Doem became increasingly panicked because his plan was destroyed. Then Rose uses the key and recordings of the King of Oriana are shown in the kingdom and in the city of Oriana. The King of Oriana conveyed the truth about all the events in the Oriana kingdom to his people. The King of Oriana had been slowly given a drug to lose consciousness by his own wife. This medicine comes from Doem, who really wants to control the Oriana kingdom. The king already knows that he will die soon, and he can't do anything because there is an organization hiding behind Doem. But the king asked his people not to worry about this problem. He had handed over the throne of the Oriana kingdom to the princess he loved, Rose Oriana. The king wants his people to trust Rose no matter what happens, because Rose is the only queen who can put the Oriana kingdom back on the right path. Lastly, the king of Oriana said something to his beloved daughter. On the other hand, other nobles immediately labeled Doem as a traitor and judged him. They actually don't want to be involved in this case and only want to take advantage of Doem. Then Rose said that she would immediately punish Doem tonight because his crime had been exposed. But suddenly something happened there. It turned out that Mordred killed Doem and Reyna. Then he immediately activated the key to open a dimensional portal called Black Rose. Mordred says that all witnesses in the Oriana kingdom must be killed. It was the Diabolos cult's rule to gain power in a territory. Then Mordred summoned one of the strongest demons from another world, Archfiend Ragnarok, to destroy the Oriana kingdom. Even though Black Rose's form was very beautiful in Shadow's eyes, he thought Ragnarok was just a weak and ugly bat. Mordred was amazed that an ordinary human could say something like that, even giving Ragnarok a strong attack. Because of this, Mordred was curious about the identity of Shadow and his organization. Then the Shadow Garden members removed their disguises and introduced themselves to Mordred. Shadow tells Rose to do something according to the throne she just received. Then Shadow is really interested in Ragnarok and will have fun fighting it. Of course, Mordred said that Shadow was just a stupid and weak man for daring to fight the very strong Ragnarok. According to Mordred, Shadow will not be able to defeat Ragnarok. Soon enough, Beta and Epsilon arrived to fight Mordred. They said that Mordred should step down because he wouldn't be able to win against Shadow. Then Mordred used his sword again to attack Beta and Epsilon. Mordred is confident that his strongest sword can defeat Shadow Garden easily. Beta and Epsilon managed to avoid the attack. and they said that Mordred's sword was an artifact belonging to the elf race. They mocked Mordred back because Mordred only used an artifact sword made by an elven smith. Mordred is actually just a coward who doesn't have any power. Of course, Mordred is annoyed and will kill them easily.
ボングどもめができると思うか。
生えた知識すべて明かしなさい。し痛い目を見てもらうことになるわよ。
魔力の斬撃血を慎め。
On the other hand, Rose has killed the demon beasts that have spread around the kingdom. Rose was sure that the Shadow Garden were also killing the demon beasts in city. Not long afterward, Margaret approached Rose because she wanted to apologize for the treatment she had given Rose. But Rose didn't care about that and told Margaret to open access to the garden. Under the palace garden there are very powerful ruins, so Margaret had to evacuate the palace residents there as soon as possible. Rose will gather soldiers and go to the capital to help evacuate the residents. Then Rose was confused because Margaret had been daydreaming since earlier. In Margaret's mind, she actually felt very guilty towards Rose, but she had to carry out her duties first, so she would talk to Rose after all her duties were finished.
心のままにことをなされますよ、ローズ陛下。
Shadow is still fighting against Archfiend Ragnarok, and Shadow only wears magic threads like his role as John Smith. Their fight went on for so long. On the other hand, Rose met 664 and 665. Then Rose entrusted the extermination of beasts to them and the other members of Shadow Garden. The Oriana soldiers who saw this were a little doubtful of Shadow Garden. Rose replies that the soldiers have nothing to worry about. Then Rose ordered the soldiers to immediately evacuate the residents. Not long after, Mordred fell right next to Rose, and he looked seriously injured. Then Beta and Epsilon came and said, "You fought very hard, Rose." They also managed to seize the Black Rose activation device and the Elf Smith's artifact from Mordred's hands. Then they asked information about Diabolo's cult, Black Rose, and Ragnarok to Mordred. If Mordred was confident that he would win this fight, he definitely wouldn't hesitate to answer their questions. Shadow Garden wanted to confirm something from their research so far. Then Mordred explained that Ragnarok would not be defeated by anyone. Ragnarok's magic power is at the top level because Ragnarok comes from the demon world. Based on research that the Diabolo's cult already knows, there are many worlds in this universe. The world of death, the world of poison, the world of ice, the world of demons, the world of magical monsters, etc. could be called realms. The symbols of the Diabolo's cult reflect the various worlds they already know. All those worlds rotate on their axis, including the world occupied by the Diabolo's cult or Shadow Garden now. There is also a world that is the middle point, and the cult has no idea what that world is like until now. According to the Diabolo's cult, it is possible that a god because that world cannot be examined by human knowledge. But the focus of the cult's research is not God, but the world rotating on its axis. If one day these worlds collide, it is possible that a dimensional portal could emerge from these worlds. For example, for certain tens or hundreds of years, the world that the Diabolo's cult and Shadow Garden were currently in had no magic energy. But after further investigation, this world once collided with the demon world. Because of that, this world can have a flow of magic energy and only certain races can adapt to this magic. The human race is a race that can adapt to the flow of magic. But the Diabolo's cult also has doubts. Can humans also be reborn or move to another world? Was it the human race that inhabited this world in the first place? Many mysteries about the human race are still being researched by the Diabolo's cult as well. The human race had a lot of advanced knowledge, and it was also possible that there was something in the demon world that had its origins in this world. It is also possible that the demon world absorbed and disappeared a country in an instant, the country of Atlantis. The Diabolo's cult was actually not from the demon world, and they only researched creatures from the demon world. They also had a theory that the demons they were researching were demons from the first realm. Meanwhile, Ragnarok is a demon from the fourth realm of the demon world. Black Rose is an artificial gate to connect the demon world and this world. A long time ago, the Oriana Kingdom accidentally opened the Black Rose and succeeded in eliminating 100,000 Vegalta Kingdom troops in an instant. But unfortunately, the Oriana Kingdom couldn't close the Black Rose back. The result was that many demons entered this world and made the Oriana Kingdom fight against them. At the right time, the Diabolo's cult cooperated with the King of Oriana, and the Diabolo's cult immediately closed the Black Rose. The Diabolo's cult had saved the Oriana Kingdom, and they asked for compensation for that service. The Diabolo's cult desires a descendant of royal blood, Rose Oriana, but the King of Oriana didn't give Rose when she was a baby to the Diabolo's cult. Because of this, the Diabolos cult made the King of Oriana a puppet that Dome had been working on all this time. Then they will also get taxes collected from residents in the city of Oriana. Not long after, Ragnarok's hand fell right behind Mordred. When Mordred looked at the sky, it turned out that Ragnarok had been chopped by Shadow. Of course, Mordred didn't believe that Shadow could defeat Archfiend Ragnarok of the Fourth Realm. Then Victoria reported to Beta and Epsilon that the eradication of the demon beasts in the city was complete. Shadow Garden's next plan is to divide the group into several area points. They had to observe the Black Rose and check the condition of the people around there. Then Victoria looked sharply and cynically at Rose for some reason. Then Mordred immediately used his power to join Ragnarok's body and kill the weak Shadow as soon as possible. In Shadow's mind, he actually didn't want to use I'm Atomic, so that Rose is the main character and her other friends could appear more in the storyline this time. But Shadow saw a stubborn enemy, so he would serve the resistance of Mordred. Shadow has taken Mordred into space, and he's starting said cool sentences. The point is that Shadow managed to get the power he wanted to become an invincible nuclear. Then Shadow starts to activate his magic to lock himself with Mordred. And finally, this is the moment you've been waiting for.
I'm Atomic.
我が主よ。これはまた。これこそが。夜明けにはまだ早いわよね。
Mordred was killed and Black Rose was destroyed by Shadow's magic. Then suddenly there was a black hole that had magic energy next to Shadow. Of course, Beta and the others were confused because this was the first time they had seen such a black hole. Not long after, the key on Rose's finger broke and Shadow was sucked into the black hole and moved to another world. At the same time, Akane had just woken up from her sleep and immediately went to the evacuation base for the residents who had survived. Akane tells her friend that she will look for some other students. They still lacked an army of knights to fight the dangers that threaten the Japanese city. Akane also wants to find the whereabouts of the family members of the residents who may still be trapped nearby. With her current strength, Akane, the knight, can fight more than her other friends. When Akane walks around town, Akane still often thinks about the person who caught her attention, Minoru Kageno. She understood that Minoru's achievements during school had always been in the middle. Even Minoru's grades in all subjects are always in the middle, including sports grades. His appearance is ordinary and he is not a famous person at school. After Akane arrived at a building, she saw no signs of life there. Monsters have been attacking humanity for a long time. Because of this, Akane had to be careful not to be attacked by monsters suddenly. Not long after, two kidnappers who were defeated by Minoru returned to target Akane for revenge. They have also been paid to kill Akane, alias the Savior. When Akane was strangled by one of the thieves, suddenly something happened there.
Shadow!
The black hole you saw in the second season, episode 12, has not completely closed. You can see that after the black hole absorbs Shadow, the scene immediately fades out and changes to a scene on a destroyed Earth, more precisely in Japan. The Eminence in Shadow 3rd season has been announced as a movie, but a release date has not been determined. This video was made on December 20th, 2023, so if there is a new announcement about the Eminence in Shadow, I will immediately notify you.